Alright everybody, so here's a video that isn't really um, around very much since this stuff seems to be sort of secretive, but here's how I make a R-hop out of urethane with my method. So it's a cast patch, which have their pros and cons, but one of the pros is that they 100% are like the size and dimensions that you need for your setup, where with cut patches that use silicone tubing and these expensive jigs, it's a lot harder to do. The length and the depth aren't so bad, but shaving off the outside, like the excess material, is really bad because this stuff here is 9 by 6 millimeter. So it's about 0.45 millimeters larger than the diameter of an airsoft barrel. So you have to take off that much material from this stuff. And that's enough where you can't put a bucking over it and call it good. But it's so little that it just makes it really difficult. I really like that material, but it's just very difficult to use. And out of maybe 10 feet of material, this stuff, I've probably used 7 of it, and almost all of that 7 feet have been wasted practice patches, and I've only had maybe 6 successful ones that I liked a lot. So it's really difficult, and these jigs are like $60 plus another one, but after shipping from Shapeways they're like $60, and it's just ridiculous. I wish I hadn't bought those. They're really overpriced. But anyways, this is how I like to make R-hops with urethane. But to start with, you need some sort of oil. I like really thick silicone oil. This is 5000 CST, whatever that means. But you can use like Vaseline or some sort of grease. But you just get a little bit of it and put it on your finger. You only need like that much. And then you get your barrel. This is I think it's a Da Vinci R Code 601. It's a really nice barrel. It's my current favorite, but they're not exactly affordable for most people. I think that this was maybe $140 with or without shipping. It was given to me for testing, but it is very expensive. But it is, in my opinion, better than PDI because it's slightly shinier, but the window is a lot nicer. But yeah, you can see their little marking system is just a little indentation for like the decimal of the millimeters. So this is a 601, like I said. But what I like to do is get a ink cartridge from one of these pens because it's the perfect size to go into an airsoft barrel to do this. And since it's plastic, or at least this particular type of plastic, nothing will stick to it. So it's the perfect inner mold for this job. Alright, so our next step is getting our urethane. This is made by Smooth On. This is their PMC 780 dry. So this is 80 degree if you're an airsofter, which is 80 Shore or Durometer A, which is a sort of hardness. But I think that A is I guess the soft type of hardness that is used for like plastics and rubbers. But when you hear airsoft degrees, it's always in short A. And shore and durometer are the same. I think that they might actually be used like in the same sentence, but I'm not entirely sure about the wording. But anyways, this stuff is a 2-to-1 mixture, so you get 50% this and 100% the part 2. But this is only I think 0.4 cc's because I'm only doing one patch. I did spill a little, but you can just wipe it up. If it does get on something important, though, you'll want to clean it with isopropyl alcohol or some sort of solvent. But for this stuff, I like to keep it in a large jar that I can keep under vacuum because the part B, this is the part A, the part B absorbs moisture from the air, and within 2 months, if you store it by itself, it will absorb so much moisture that it'll go bad. But this stuff is almost a year old, and it is seen water absorption even under vacuum, but it is better. But you might not be able to see, but it's formed a skin inside. But somewhere right there, I have a hole from previous uses, which is still somewhat fresh. But you suck up twice as much as we used before, so 0.8 cc's, and there we go. And we put this down. As for mixing surfaces, I use these plastic playing cards because they're disposable, and they're just like a decent surface to use, but you can use really anything that you like for this. But yeah, so this one, I guess this is the part A. So the part A absorbs water from the air and goes bad, but if you store it under vacuum, it lasts at least 5 times longer, if not more. So now we get a little mixing spike, and we just mix it like epoxy or whatever. You want it to be as thorough as possible, because like with epoxy, if you do it wrong, there'll be soft pockets of unmixed material that'll totally compromise the strength of whatever you're trying to do. But you just mix this for a good while, and yeah, it only takes like a minute or 2, but it's fine. Now this urethane, I think that it has a set time of 30 to 45 minutes, as I recall, and you really need every last bit of that because you may get sidetracked, or you may have to go find a part that you need, or really anything. So any less than 15 minutes I think is too little, which some people run into and some people don't, but there's really not much of a community of people that use urethane, or really people that do RHOP, but especially not urethane. But anyways, that should be nice and mixed. I don't know if you can see, but it's all pretty homogeneous. So now I get a syringe. You can use a smaller one, but the bigger the better. But what you do is you take the plunger all the way out, and you scoop this stuff in, carefully not to spill any. And you do this so you can suck the air bubbles that you've mixed in from mixing it, as well as air bubbles that may be in it from sitting or from manufacturing, because an air bubble may be the difference between accuracy in your gun and not having any accuracy at all. But you just scoop off as much as you can. I mixed extra because you may not have enough by mixing just the right amount, because you may waste some and you can never get all of it off of your surface. But it's good to make a little more, because although this stuff is $40, you could make thousands of these patches with that much, and you'll never use it. It'll all go bad before you use all of it, most likely. But now the next step, you have to be careful. You might be able to see here that there's a air pocket. You want to get it slowly so the urethane flows up and you can get all the air out, or else that'll be a little problematic. But now that I've gotten the air, I put my finger on the end and I pull the piston. You may be able to see those bubbles coming out, but this is under vacuum. I'm not sure how much vacuum, but I imagine at least 20 inches of mercury. Now you may think that you could use a vacuum chamber, which I made one that went to 28 inches of mercury, which I think is just because of my altitude that I wasn't able to reach 29.5 or whatever maximum vacuum is. But that one, for some reason, it didn't quite work the same, and this, even with a syringe, worked better. Now you can do it with one of these, but it takes more cycles to do it. Now next, this is a trick that I learned from working with epoxy and other things. I think it's done for some parts of cooking, but you heat up the material. Now you don't want this very hot. You should be able to touch it, and it should be a little uncomfortable, but it shouldn't be too hot, or else it may destroy the mixture. But this thins it out, so it's a lot more watery, and the air can escape more easily. I don't know if this gets out more air or if it just goes faster, but it does take less vacuum cycles. So if you're using a faster setting mix, this may be a good trick to use heat. So I think I may do a few more of these. But each time you do want to be careful that you don't introduce any more air. So you want to push the plunger up very slowly to not form any pockets of air, which is tedious, but it is going to save you time in the end. So yeah, I'll just fast forward this since it's kind of boring. Alright, so hopefully now you can see this stuff is pretty clear of air pockets and bubbles. So what we now do is we go to the corner of our window and we have a little bit of urethane hanging off the tip. We slowly squeeze down the plunger and we move it across. Try not to develop any fresh air pockets. And then there we go. So what I do to mold the outside of this is I have a piece of that plastic playing card that I mixed this stuff on, a different piece but the same material, and I fold it over like this, and I then get one of these small binder clips. The small ones are better because they clamp harder for some reason. But I then just clamp that. And then you leave it for, ideally you should leave it for 2 days, or whatever your mix says, but at least a day longer than whatever your particular mix instructs, since they usually take longer than they say. But anyway, so that's good. But for molding the outside, I've experimented with like tubing. So like this is a piece of aluminum arrow that I cut down, and this does work, but only with like a maybe 30% success rate, because it tends to introduce air bubbles when you slide it over, which I have an example of right here. I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's an air bubble in there, which makes that patch unusable. But very recently, I tried this out with the card, where you just bend it over your barrel and squeeze it like this, and it gives you pretty much 100% success rate, as long as you do everything else right. Like as long as you don't swing your barrel around or bump into it or anything. But yeah, it's really as easy as that to make R hops for a barrel out of urethane. Now for this stuff, it's 80 degrees, so 80 durometer or 80 Shore hardness A, whatever you want to call it. And normally, people would say that's too hard, and I sort of agree, but I've had decent success with this stuff. But this 70-degree silicone is by far my favorite in terms of performance, but it's just so difficult to use. It's not even worth it at all. But for a 80-degree maple leaf bucking, one of the new 2021 series, it's easily my favorite bucking yet, because it has the same feel as the 70-degree McMaster silicone tubing, but it's in bucking form, so it's already ready for you. Just slip it on your barrel. Now this, I think, is a Decepticon, which I found to be pretty close to a Autobot, and I don't have much experience with the MR, but I think they're not significantly different. Now, as I was saying, I really like these 2021 Maple Leaf 70-degree buckings because they perform as well as this McMaster material, at least nearly as well. I don't know if I've gotten 100% performance out of one of those tubing pieces, but the one that I definitely got working the best was very, very good. It felt better than one of these cast urethane patches, but it's nearly impossible to replicate from my numerous tests and trials. But anyways, so I think that this material is the way to go, and I think that this is the same stuff that Maple Leaf used for their bucking, or at least very nearly the same, because this 80-degree urethane, it doesn't feel like an 80-degree Maple Leaf 2021 silicone bucking. It's less grippy, which I'm not really sure how grip works exactly. I've only theorized, and I think that's the same with everybody else. But I'm not sure um, if this is the best, because I feel like this is better, but I haven't been able to really accurately compare them since this is so difficult to do. And this is 10 degrees softer than this. So there's another thing on top of it being a different material. But anyways, I have a 80 degree Maple Leaf 2021 bucking, and it feels almost identical to this for grip, but it's 10 degrees harder, so it just feels slightly harder, which means it'll last longer in theory. I mean, it should last longer because it is harder. But I think that if this material can be had, or something very similar, for casting R hop patches, or buckings like somebody I know wants to do, I think it'll be about ideal since this is the route Maple Leaf has gone. And there are other interesting silicone buckings. Like here is a 40 degree airsoft philosopher bucking, which if you guys know about that, um, they're not exactly, they don't exactly have a good reputation. And here's a 60 degree from them. Now the material on this bucking, it's 40 degrees, so it's very, very soft. This is like a very overdone piece of pasta. It's just too soft. This was ripping a lot back when I was using it. In this 60 degree, it feels very similar to the 70 degree, if you can believe that. But this bucking, I think that if it were a different design, it would have been better. But when I was using this, their barrel was just so bad that I don't think I could really get an accurate impression of this. And their chamber was bad too. And by the time I had lapped the barrel and fixed the chamber, I had already sold the chamber, and I was in the process of trading the barrel. So now I have maybe 2 of these buckings, maybe 3 of these, and I have their 50 degree space bucking. But anyway, so this material, 60 degree, some sort of silicone, seems very good, but the actual design is bad. But it's definitely a step in the right direction over an old Maple Leaf. Like this is a 50 degree Autobot from their Macaron series. This I cut in half just for like viewing purposes and experiments, but for all intents and purposes, that's not as good as this by far. But yeah, so my next goal is to skip even trying 70 degree urethane, since I think that although this is very good, I think this has more promise to it. I think this will be ideal since I'd hope that Maple Leaf has done more testing than I have and ever will. And it seems like they really hit the nail on the head in terms of material. And the only drawback now is the guns that these are going in, the way that they are installed into guns, and the quality of barrels, which I will post further updates on a thing I'm experimenting with O-rings, similar to fancy PCP air guns. But yeah, so just sum it all up, urethane is good. I think this stuff is better, and if a bucking could be cast with this material that's a better design than what Maple Leaf has done, or made for a custom platform, it would probably be the best thing out there. And I don't think it could be beat unless uh, I just don't think it could be beat. Um, and one more thing, while I'm still thinking about it, is for storing this stuff. I may have mentioned it, but you don't need a vacuum chamber. You just need a jar that the stuff can fit in. I like to keep the two parts separate just in case. And a lid that's airtight, and what you do is you heat the outside of it with like a propane torch or a hair dryer, and you can watch the moisture evaporate away on both inside and outside. And then once it's still pretty hot, you put this in and you screw on the lid rather tight, and it forms a vacuum, and it stays good for at least a month, in my experience. And you may have to redo it every month since the seals on those aren't the best. But compared to buying a vacuum chamber, which at the minimum is $50, or to build one at the minimum of also like $50, it's really not worth it for what I'm doing. And I imagine what most people are doing. And for the people that make a lot of these, I would hope that they would use up this material faster, where they don't really need super long-term storage. So yeah, that should sum all that up. And if you have any questions, I can make another video about this, or comments or whatever. But yeah, thanks for watching, and see you guys later.